all about wireframes. I previously described my design process and you've heard me say I use sketches. Those are actually named wireframes, and they're representations of what you need to design. Like I previously said, you're not a business consultant, thus you don't need to know the ins and outs of the business. You don't know exactly what functionalities are needed to be covered in the website, so for that we use wireframes. These sketches take away a lot of the unneeded work. You and the client agree on an initial sketch and then you get started. If the client isn't happy with your first proposal, you can adjust the wireframe within minutes. The same can't be said about the design. If you miss some core functionality or some element the client was expecting, you may need to start the whole thing over. Skype or Google Hangout are shady pitfalls because of this. You don't recognize the trouble until you're in way over your head. Communicating directly is great for establishing a close work relationship with a client, but when it's all said and done, you need things in writing. You need lists, you need sketches, you need wireframes. You can't get into an argument over the design where you say, "But don't you remember when you said you wanted this like this?" That's not the way to go, even though you may be right. It really doesn't matter at that point. The client isn't happy, and that's that. So take all imagination or interpretation out of the brief. Talk to your client and establish fine-tuning details at the end of the project, for the last revision maybe, or talk in broad strokes about the project deadline, his budget, and things like that. At the end of the day, everything should be in writing, but without a wireframe, you're designing with a major handicap. Let's have a look at a wireframe so you can better understand things. As you can see, this is made for an e-commerce website, and it's one of the better ones. It features lots of details, so you can see some real work was put into it. Ideally, this is what you should be basing your work on, but don't expect the client to come up with something so rigorous, so meticulously done, because you're in for a bad time. It's far more common you'll end up with a wireframe that looks like this. As you can see, this is miles away from the previous one I showed you, but you have to make it work. Moving on, an important question is, who should create the wireframe? Well, this depends on a lot of things. In general, when you're doing design contests on sites like 99 Designs, you're more likely to have a wireframe. When you're pitching your services to a client, then it's up to you to help him out with a wireframe. An example usually works wonders, so always have one available so you can pass it along to your client. If he's a bit older or doesn't know his way around the computer too well, then you might not be surprised to see some unrealistic sketches. Keep in mind your clients don't know web design, that's what they hired you for. In their wireframes you may see 5 or 6 columns of content in one row, but they also want their design to look good on a 13-inch laptop. That's unrealistic, but it's your job to guide them. So to sum it up, always work with a wireframe. Wherever reasonable, ask for a wireframe by first providing an example. If the client can't manage or refuses to put the time in, you have to decide whether to drop the project or continue by creating a wireframe on your own and then sending it for approval. If you choose the latter option, you should expect several wireframe revisions and amendments. What can you use to create wireframes? That's another common question. Well, every design program can make a wireframe, even Microsoft Paint. You can even use a pencil and a piece of paper. I recommend you check out the following site for a complete list of free wireframing tools. As always, the link will be attached to the course. If that doesn't work for you, simply Google free wireframe program and you're going to find lots of options. If you want to create a wireframe in Photoshop, you can do so quite easily. Open up your 960 grid file and start by placing a black rectangle on the screen. Lower the fill to 0% by going to the top of the Layers panel and sliding it all the way down. Then access the Layer Styles dialog by hitting the small FX icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Select Stroke, leaving the settings as they are except Position, which should be set to Inside. We now have our first element. This can act as our logo. Open up the guides with Ctrl:// and position the element next to the outer left one. For more clarity, get the Type tool and write inside the shape. Please note the current mouse cursor. This is not what you want. If you click to type, you'll see you'll be writing bound by the edges of the shape. It's better practice to hit Ctrl:/H. This will hide our anchor points, and now our mouse cursor will have a new icon. Now you can type in logo. Use your smart guides to center the text inside the shape. you'll see it will actually snap to the center position. If that doesn't happen, then go to View and make sure Snap is checked. Same goes for Snap 2. Make sure all the options are checked. After we have our first element, we can simply duplicate it with Ctrl-J, or hold Alt with dragging the two layers. Then use Ctrl-T to resize and rename your next layer. Let me speed up the process to show you how you can create a simple wireframe by repeating these techniques. As you can see, I'm constantly doing the same thing. I'm copying my elements, resizing and renaming them while making sure I'm still within my 960 grid. I like to space them out correctly by using the tools up top, but we'll talk more about that later on. One thing to keep in mind is this: don't follow the wireframe too closely. This is a trap you might fall into unwittingly. In the quest of making the client happy, you might follow his directions too literally. Going back to our example wireframe, things seem pretty much sorted here, right? But does this mean you have to follow it exactly as it's laid out here? Of course not. This is something that happens a lot on 99 designs. Designers simply follow the wireframe too closely, and the clients receive 10, 20, 50 designs that all look the same, give or take a color scheme or some minute design elements. Wireframes are indications of what core functionalities have to be included, yet nothing is written in stone. You're hired as a web designer for your expertise, for your decision-making, not just to color inside the lines. So you have to know when to listen to your client and when to disregard his input, because again, you're the expert. Going into a bit more detail about this specific project, we have a categories panel on the left side. Should you move it on the right? I doubt it, since this is how most websites are laid out, and that's for a good reason. Should the category expand underneath, like we have in electronics, where flat panel TVs, digital cameras, etc. are underneath the heading? This is up to you. You can easily change that. You can make it open to the right side in order to minimize the panel's expansion. Should the Have Any Questions area be placed underneath this categories panel? No, not really, but again, it's up to you. You have to understand that most elements are flexible. So please don't follow wireframes like they're directly from God himself. Take them as suggestions and use your judgment to decide what should be changed and what should be followed literally. Okay, this is enough for now. This is how our wireframe looks, and it only took us a few minutes. If the client doesn't like a part of it, we can easily adjust, or for that matter, we can actually make another one in 5 to 10 minutes. Of course, you can add more details to it. For example, you can specify if something is a slider or if something moves, in order for the client to better understand the wireframe. Now it's time for you to create your own one. Take a look at cnet.com and create a wireframe based on its current layout. Even though it's pretty easy to do, it really helps to have a PSD file with wireframing elements. Please take the time to perform this exercise. Include as many details as you see fit.